Agree with Andrew. I mean, the biggest takeaway is the little blowback that came through with the Democrats. And oftentimes, what you see in the election, the midterm election after a presidential campaign, is uh, pretty much a wave of support going to the opposition party and not the sitting president's party. And especially when inflation is at its all-time highest, and this is the fourth time since World War II where it is, how little of a blowback it is to Democrats. And I think in part it's pretty much based off of how independent and persuadable voters broke. You saw a widening gap in the 2020 presidential cycle with conservatives, right-leaning moderates, independent voters, and left-leaning independent voters not to vote against Trump and extreme Republican. And you saw it widen in some of these key states in Michigan, Nevada, Arizona, where independent voters started to break towards Democrats. So I thought that that was highly surprising. And I think it came down to just overall issues and the messaging that were being touted by Republicans. You had extreme MAGA Republicans that weren't aligning to what everyday voters cared about. They were talking about election fraud. They were talking about creating a separation and wedge issues, but they weren't really offering any substance on issues that really matter to voters, things that they deal with on an average and everyday basis, from the high cost of living, education issues, healthcare, and insulin. Whereas Democrats were able to offer solutions and point back to Biden's administration on the Inflation Reduction Act, and how he helped propose legislation on healthcare and insulin, and overall defending our democracy. People were upset with the January 6th insurrection and were turned off by extreme Republicans. And going back to what Andrew was saying, I mean, voters, people of color, they don't want to hear the extremist notion. They want to see government work, and they want to see government get things done for voters. And I think that that's what pushed people to vote blue in some of these key states.
Thank you. Since last September, I think we have started from Northern California here, and Andrew here. We kick off the API summit, and at that time, I think we have almost 15 candidates coming here, and since then, we pay a lot of attention to the both mainstream media and the regular the individual YouTubers, and also we pay a lot of attention, follow the polling. And for each of you, what's your the thinking about the polling and the media and for the election, and any surprise, and what's your basic ideas about the media and the poll? Andrew.
Yeah, I mean, the media is pretty lazy, I would say. Like the media just wants to talk about a few pet issues. And I looked at the polling and going in, where the three top issues for Republican-leaning voters were the economy / inflation, immigration, and crime. And then for Democrat-leaning voters, it was just, you wouldn't believe it. I mean, the economy was still pretty high, but like the three top issues were abortion, healthcare, and democracy. And there became this strange argument where Joe Biden kept doing this over and over again, saying, "Hey, like democracy is on the ballot," and with the implication being like, if you vote for Democrats, you're pro-democracy, and if you vote for Republicans, you're not. And like that, there's some truth to that, in that Republicans are more likely to be election deniers and extremists, and like that sort of thing nowadays. But it actually doesn't make sense to say that just voting for Democrats means you're pro-democracy in a two-party system. So the media got it wrong in terms of the projections, I think. I mean, there were some projections that had it something close to this, but most of the press accounts I saw tended to go with hammering some of the more Republican facing messages. Now, what does it mean moving forward? I mean, I will confess that in 2020, I thought there was going to be a blue wave, and there was not. The Democrats lost 15 House seats. And on this one, I thought there was going to be more of a red wave, and there was not. So like now my new conclusion is that we're just so predetermined at this point that it's very hard to generate a wave in either direction.
Thank you. I still remember on the eve of election night, the November 7th, we have a dinner there. I think you are pretty depressed, saying that we probably going to have a pretty bad result. But turned out it's quite a surprise. There's no right way, but also I think it's for the brands we have campaign all together. We heavily rely on the media. And what's your perception to the media, Brian?
Yeah, honestly, right now the media is overworked, and they have a lot of staffing issues. I mean, traditional media and traditional print is dying, and right now, in order to get any type of revenue, most media companies are looking at clickbait articles so that folks can go on their page and see their ads. And oftentimes, what political campaigns do is we use the media and we pretty much write the stories for the media in terms of our press releases that we send out or any of the advisories we send out. I think the biggest thing right now is we know that fear sells. We saw in the 2020 campaign, we saw in the 2016 campaign, we saw in some parts of this election campaign. Fear is a moneymaker for the media. So a good headline that scares voters will allow people to click on it and start reading, and they'll be able to start generating ad value. So I think in terms of good media, we need to move away towards that type of polarization. We need to talk about the issues. We need to talk about what really matters to everyday voters. Is it a money maker? No, but it's something that would be good for our overall democracy.
Well, I want to throw something out here too, and this is one of the things that Don and I talked about over dinner before Election Day. When I think we need our own media, like a Chinese American or Asian American media network or channel. I think then it could dig into things and be less ideological or partisan. I think it would naturally be quite moderate. Now, when I say this, I know obviously that there are already media publications, Chinese language media and Chinese American, but I think that we need to do something at scale that is a genuine alternative to the CNNs, MSNBCs, Foxes, or whatnot. And so there are some people looking at this. I'm sure some people here, but if you look at any community's path to political power, that the media ends up being one of the huge steps. And Chinese Americans and Asian Americans are underrepresented in the media at every dimension here in the US. Like you look at I was on CNN last week. There aren't that many Asians on CNN, and to the extent that they are, they're not really, they're not really in position to influence opinion very heavily. Certainly I can't think of any on Fox. MSNBC's got like maybe 2 I can think of, but it's like we're pretty limited, and I don't think anything changes for us until that changes. So Chinese Americans and Asian Americans, we have a lot of economic power. We don't have any cultural or political power. And so the question is, how do we transfer our economic power into political and cultural power? And I think it's going to require a lot of investment, a lot of investment that loses a lot of money for people, and that's something that a lot of us don't like. It's like we don't like spending money on things that don't return money, but someone's going to have to bite the bullet. When I say generationally, like at one point, someone's going to have to say, you know what, we're going to spend for the future of the community.
Yeah, Andrew, you just mentioned about the money. So I have been doing the fundraising all the time, and for this cycle, I think it's Jay Liang, Zhang Tong, Alex, and we have Yang Guang. We have all together have been raised a lot of money for many candidates here, and but I think it's most of them they lost this election. But I just want to ask 2 of you, and for your view about the campaign finance and the fundraising, and also it's for the contribution and the kind of investment on the Capitol Hill, on the capital, human capital. What's the future we need to, how to most effective to use the money to invest on the candidate. And also it's I want to maybe later get some comment from Jay. Let's Andrew and Brian to make a comment about the money.
You know, so this is what came up at our dinner, Don.
Yeah.
Oh, is that so? There was an effort a long time ago. You all remember 80-20, which is trying to get 80% of Chinese Americans to vote in the same direction, with the logic being that if you got us all to vote the same way, then we could become a meaningful bloc.
Yeah.
So if you look at our population nationwide at 6.5%, we are politically important in very, very few locations in the United States. You'd have to say Hawaii and parts of California, but other than that, we're very limited. And so how can we get more political power is if we get ourselves together and say, look, let's make demands, and then whoever lives up to those demands, say we're going to back them and get everyone to back them. But there aren't that many of us. So here's like the big idea, which is a great collaboration with Forward that I think we should all work on together, is we try and get the Chinese Americans and Asian Americans and the fed up independents who are centrists and moderates, which by the way overlaps very heavily with a lot of Chinese Americans and Asian Americans, because most of us aren't terribly extreme or ideological. We just, to Brian's point, we just want things to work better. This next presidential election in 2024 is going to get decided by approximately 80,000 voters across 4 states. It's going to be Arizona, Georgia, Wisconsin, and then you can sort of pick the 4th, like maybe Michigan, maybe Nevada, something along those lines. This past year was about 70,000 votes. If you were to be able to credibly say, look, we have 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 moderate, centrist, independent voters in these swing states, in Nevada, Arizona, Georgia. Boy, Georgia, by the way, is 4.5% Asian. So, you know, we could very credibly say, like, look, we can get like everyone to head in a particular direction. Then we could become, so this is one of the smart things that our community should do, is that this country is 50-50. It's, you know, it's a bit of a mess. But in a 50-50 country, if we control the middle 5, we could tip the election one way or the other. If you had 5% in Georgia, Nevada, Wisconsin, I don't know how many Asians are in Wisconsin. Then how much money does that take? 10, 20 million, maybe. You know, like if our community were to bring together, let's call it $20 million with a goal, and let's set a target. Let's say $1 million. $1 million's maybe too high because you don't need that many. 200,000 swing state centrist voters will agree to vote in the way that we say, if you do X, Y, and Z. That's a way that we could actually play at the top levels. If we stay stuck within this, like, you know, within our little boxes and try and win this race, win that race, you know, like, I think we're going to get stuck.
Thank you. How about Brian?
Yeah, Andrew's 100% spot on. I mean, look at how close all these races are right now. In Nevada, Mark Kelly's up by what, 5.5%. Cortez Mastro's up by, or trailing by just a couple hundred votes. I mean, what would be great for the AAPI community is if we can leverage that power, that voting block, into one centralized group where we are controlling the turnout and the mobilization of being that decided voter. Look at how Joe Manchin is pretty much controlling the U.S. Senate right now, being that one single vote outside for Democrats. I mean, he's so crucial. He's getting a lot of that leverage power. And the same thing can be done with the AAPI community. So when it comes down to it, I mean, early money is like yeast. You need as much money as possible in order to create any fulfilling and meaningful impact on any type of race, whether it's at the local level all the way up in the presidential. So it's going to take money and mobilization to do so. But there's ways that we could do it and ways that we could target the AAPI community, whether it's from a media standpoint to an organizational grassroots standpoint.
Yeah, guys, I'm looking at this Nevada stat. Like, what percentage of Nevada is Asian? 9, maybe.
Yeah.
You know, and so these elections are getting decided by like 1%. I mean, if we could legitimately say, look, we'll get 80% of the Asians of Nevada to vote this way or that way, then that determines the election. I mean, the same could be true in Georgia. Let's just take out everything else out. If we just got 80% of the Asians in Nevada and Georgia to vote one way or another, it controls national politics. I mean, that's actually a very worthy vision.
Yeah, and it's doable too.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. I think it's right after this election, some people feel a little bit disappointed, but for me, I'm pretty confident that in the past 5 years, all the Asian around the country and especially Chinese community, Chinese American, they all start open their wallet to support, and most of us support Andrew.
Were they disappointed because Alan lost and Jay lost, or like what's the
yeah? That's the at least personally the most.
And now that I say it out loud, that's not so good.
So that's kind of a little bit disappointed, but
those are all very good candidates too. That's
yes. That's right after it. It's a lot of people we have been donated to the candidate, and after a little bit of painful. The feeling, and we start to realize next election cycle 2024, I think it's Asian community can do a lot of the effort to spend money much smarter, and also just like you say, so we just pick up some swing state and focus on the Asian resources, especially money.
Let's dig into this a little bit. So I love this so much. Okay, check it out. Ordinarily, in order to get anyone to care about a race, you have to get them to get a candidate they care about.
Yeah.
Let's take the Asians in Nevada. Let's say it's 9%. Who's the most senior Asian American elected official in Nevada? Like, no one that senior, because I've been there, and like I can't even think of anyone. Georgia is 4.5%, 4.6% Asian. There are a couple of state reps there. But if you have like 5 or 9% statewide, the odds of you having a really senior elected official win pretty low. But if you had that voting block, you could choose between the Republican or the Democratic senator, governor, president. You know what I mean? So like in a way, the candidate stuff is the loser for us. Because if you had the 9% of Nevadans get behind various Asians, like what's the highest they can go? Not very high. In a place like Utah too, it's like you get one state rep, and then we're like, yay, we got one state rep, which I love. I appreciate. I mean, I love that state rep. But if you just had us together saying, look, we may not have any elected officials, but we actually control the outcomes in your stupid two-party system. Who's going to win? And then we make that real. Oh my God, that'd be so fun. We could take advantage of this stupid design. You know what I mean? Like, instead of playing in this game that's set up against us, we like switch and then play the game that would benefit us, because there's like this polarization and you just need this block in the middle. Let's do it. Nevada, Georgia, where else can we pull this swing state stuff?
Michigan, could do it anywhere.
Wait, how many Asians are in Michigan?
I think there's like 6%.
Dude, let's look it up. This would be hysterical. I mean, I've hung out with the Asians of Michigan, and it is good fun.
Yeah, and before we jump into the open Q&A to the people and to the Tom's question,
we need a catchy name for this. We need a catchy name that's other than 80-20.
Yeah. It's I think is that there's because Brian is represent kind of not Asian, right? So, but I really want to.
Persians are Asian,
aren't you?
Part of Asian. But I do.
I thought Brian was Asian.
Yeah, he's Asian. He's Asian. But I want to ask you, since you have a very
Brian likes this idea.
Yeah, from
I
the
do,
line. Yeah. A little bit diverted to go a general question about how we can working with Black community and the Latino community. You know that in the next 10 years, I think it's a Black community and Latino community, they're going to gain a lot of political power. So for the Asian community, how we can learn from them and turn our economic advantage into the political power.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, right now, we know that the Asian community is the fastest growing bloc and fastest growing voting bloc here in the United States. But it's not going to be, it's going to pretty much double in the next 10 years, but not at the same rate that Latinos and they won't have that same power that Latinos and the Black community have. I think one of the biggest things is, and I know Andrew has said this in the past, there's not that much difference between what voters care about. Latino voters, especially first generation ones or the immigrant communities, they care about the exact same issues that Asian Americans care about. Having good jobs, being able to provide for your family, not working paycheck to paycheck, and having good education so that your kin can succeed in this rapidly changing economy. So I think what the Asian American community can do is, one, invest heavily in political campaigns, invest heavily in our government. You're doing it right now, Don, by creating PACs. What we need to do is make sure that we build up our next bench of Asian American candidates in order to run for office. How the Latino and Black community started out, we're at the local level. They started out small and then they grew big in order to take over state seats, state legislatures, congressional races, etc. And that's what we need to do for the AAPI community.
Thank you. I think it's Jay, you want to make a comment?
Yeah, thank you, Don, and it's very nice to see Andrew and Brian here again. And this election, I actually traveled from Asia to US at least 7 times, including 48 hours local meeting in North Carolina and C13. But I think that I learned a lot. There are some good things happening and some bad things still we need to learn a lot more. I would say good thing here, number one, we see a lot of professionals like Charlie, like, Tom, you are the best for sure. And Charlie do, and also a lot of good contributors like Alec, and also maybe Dong Tong here as well. But I think that's a good thing. But bad thing here, we are still short of, number one, a lot of local underground grassroots organizations like Charlie has been organizing in CA 45. And number two, we need to organize the Chinese community, specifically Chinese American community, a lot more, and to motivate them to not only invest but also put labor, put underground volunteer works there. I heard that in CA 45 we didn't see a lot of yard sites. We do have a large Chinese business community there, but they didn't show the enthusiasm to support our own candidate. So that's very bad. And I will say number three, we still need good candidates. We had some good candidates in the past. Andrew is one of the best, of course. And that would give us the nationwide campaign or the motivation to join the political the activities or to do more political engagement here, or including, I say a lot of USAA people and local leaders, Xiao Yan, and also Swallow here. So I think we still need a good candidate, and we also hope to see another Chinese American candidate or Asian American candidate on the nationwide stage 2024. And hopefully you are prepared for that. So, but the last thing here, we still have Georgia runoff. Hopefully we also have a bit of planning for that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Andrew.
Thanks, Jay.
Andrew, you have a comment about the question we just talk about the Latinos, Black community, how Asian community to play the political game in among the
yeah. So there are different ways to. There are different groups we could emulate. Right now, I was just messaging someone about trying to build this middle 5% of the fulcrum. And I think one thing that would advantage us is if we went beyond the Asian community and enlisted white centrist independents, whom like I hang out with a lot of them now, but also Latinos. There are a lot of Latinos who are not happy with either party and are naturally not super ideological. They're like Asians in that they just want safety and public schools to work and like jobs. Like a lot of them are just very kitchen table focused. So I think we need to carve our own path. The folks that work in like in philanthropy, there are some lessons to be learned from the Jews. That's where the media comes in. So the Jews were very oppressed, and then they achieved a lot of economic power, and then they achieved a ton of cultural and political power. A ton. They invested a ton. They've generally been much more unified than we are. There are fewer of them, by the way. I mean, we're like 6.5%. I think Jews are only like 1.5% or something. Like, which will be stunning to you all because you're like, oh, they're only 1.5%. But their clout is, vast. I think the way that the Black community did it is the Black community became entrenched in the Democratic Party, and they see the Democratic Party as their primary vehicle for political power. This, by the way, is one thing that does raise like a little bit of, unfortunately, friction between different communities, because if there's one group that says, look, like this is our path to political power, then there tends to be a bit of a zero-sum mentality where it's like you don't necessarily feel like, oh, if we like that, because in some ways there's like a finite number of seats and slots in particular places. Latinos are the most underrepresented group aside from Asian Americans in terms of elected politics. I don't know if you all know that. So we're about 6% of the population. We're less than 1% of elected officials. So that's one reason why we have to keep trying, because we're the most underrepresented. Latinos, though, it's something like 17% of the population and maybe 3.5% of elected officials. So the ratio is almost as bad as us. And so I think that there's a lot of potential in the Latino community with this centrist coalition because they don't feel well served.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom. It's a long time didn't see you. I know you have a question there, and you can just open your mic, unmute yourself, and make some comment and ask question. Thank you.
Yeah, it's good to see you. Yeah, so my question is, we talk about the Chinese American community or the AAPI community. I'm curious, what are the unifying policy issues that could logically coalesce the community to vote, and that you could then apply that pressure to a given candidate in a close race? Like, what would be the thing we would ask for to win our support?
Let's say it's at the presidential level, just for fun. But I would welcome people here just saying, like, what would you want to see? I mean, one obvious one is you could say 2 cabinet officials or something along those lines, because I know there was a lot of anger that we didn't really get one despite trying to help Joe Biden a lot. It was like they said Kamala and you're like, no. And then there's like Catherine Tai, the trade representative, and you're like, kind of, maybe, I'm not even sure. So you could lead off with that. The National Museum, for sure, that one's an easy one. But I think we should probably be thinking more structurally, which would be like a doubling or tripling of pro rata investment in Asian communities in terms of public resources, which, by the way, right now, again, mathematically, I think we're the most underinvested in group if you trace public dollars and like see where they're going. So you could draw up a whole list of things. And it could not just apply to us. Again, it could be like anyone who joins our coalition. We could be like, hey guys, we're going to ask for all sorts of goodies in order to swing this election your way. I think this would be hysterically funny and pretty effective, because if we could genuinely deliver even, gosh, like, tens of thousands of votes in these crucial areas in a reliable way, then it would just make sense. But I'd be very open to what other people would want. I think the cabinet thing is both important and unimportant personally. Like these things come and go. And so, like, I don't know how many of us are that pumped that Elaine Chao was Secretary of Transportation. I mean, it's like, like, did happen. But I'd love to hear what other people value. I like the idea of upping investment in various communities that right now are underinvested in.
Thank you. I think it's Bing Wei has raised a question about the how important it is to have more Asian candidates running on forward party ticket 2024 or even beyond 2024. What's the status so far for the forward party in terms of statewide, nationwide registration and signature collection, and any challenge, and what's the potential, the big picture for Asian community about your party?
Oh, well, thank you all. Would certainly love your leadership and support in building the Forward Party. So we're on the ballot in Texas and Connecticut, which is actually a pretty big deal because those states are really hard to get ballot access in. And we got ballot access because we absorbed 2 other organizations that already had ballot access. We're in the process of absorbing / merging with / whatever the Common Sense Party of California, which some of you might have heard of in California. So what Forward has become is we've become the umbrella organization for anyone who is trying to start like an independent party in various states. We think we'll be on the ballot in 15 states in the next 4 months, and then 25 to 30 states by 2023. And then by 2024, potentially all 50. So for Asian candidates to run in Forward will be a very real possibility by this next cycle. I will say that for Asian candidates should just do whatever's working for them in that district. And so if it's running as a Republican or a Democrat, I'm all for it. But the Forward Party should be able to open up new opportunities in different places by 2024.
Thank you. I like Charlie Liu. Could you share some your PAC experience, especially in the Southern California? I saw you have done a lot of, instead of beyond the fundraising, you have to do a lot of endorsement and also team up with a volunteer team to help Jay Chen and the other candidate to run. But you are always very humble, low profile there. But I do admire all you have done. Please share some the story with us.
Oh, thank you, Dan. Thank you, Andrew, for the opportunity. The PAC I'm working for is called IPAC. It's I Chinese American PAC. This has 22 years of history. This we support Democratic, support Republican. Mainly 70% of candidates we endorse are Chinese American. In this November election, we endorsed 34 candidates, and probably 23 won or near winning the election. We supported the Lan He, we supported the Jay, similar to the Forward Party. We do see there are a lot of challenges to unite Chinese American as a one voting bloc. That's a dream, right? Particularly one thing I have very challenging is affirmative action. The AA is very divisive. People keep arguing this topic. How I would like to see how, Andrew, you want to unite Chinese American in terms of this particular topic.
Yeah, I mean, the Supreme Court, in my opinion, is going to decide on affirmative action in a matter of weeks.
Yeah.
And so I think it's going to be taken out of our hands. You know, like whatever you think about it, after the Supreme Court decides it, that's going to be the rule. The polling I've seen suggests that at this point, a majority of Americans would be for a change in policy from what's currently happening. So in my opinion, this is something that we should just wait and see what the Supreme Court does, because whether we're like, you know, on one side or another, like it's probably going to get decided in a matter of, you know, days or weeks. And then after that happens, some people in our community will be very happy or sad, whichever way it goes down. And then, you know, like, but I think because there's such diversity of opinion in our community, trying to say to everyone, hey, you should all be for it or against it, you know, like I've always felt like that's something that an individual has a different opinion on.
Thank you. I think, yeah, this will be this is worth a major headache for Chinese Americans like Jay Chen. People hate Jay Chen. Chinese Americans don't vote for Jay Chen just because he's a single standing in this topic.
So I take it from that suggestion that Jay was pro affirmative action.
Yes.
Yeah, and there's some Chinese Americans who feel very strongly about it. Yep, that's right.
Yeah, that's a side, but I think it's a it's a very hard to solve, especially for the first generation, the immigrant, and also it's in my mind, in the next 5 to 10 years, this first generation immigrant will be the major political fundraising, at least a part of its resources. So it's that we need to figure out after Supreme Court's decision and how we can solve this issue. And also the challenge for all Chinese American here is how we extended our connection and ideology to other ethnic group. I think Xiaoyan has been do a lot of research. Is anyway, I want to listen to your a little bit take away from this election and share with Andrew and Brian and the rest of us. This is not only that we listen to Andrew one way, but I do hope everyone here, if you have a question, thoughts, so we can share as help Andrew to know us a little bit better. Thank you, Xiaoyan.
Oh, thanks, Dan. But I've been watching this case, but I haven't really. But I agree with Andrew. Right now, it's pretty much it's not in our hands in this, but it definitely is a very divisive issue. But for the midterm, my reaction is actually I think the biggest winner is American people. I mean, I really feel at least they made a good statement saying people still believe the system still can work. The extreme people, to me, the most important thing about democracy is stop extremism, right? I think that's what third party idea also come. That's the whole code. I mean, the whole bottom line is, can we stop the extremism to pull this country, you know, off track? And I think this midterm actually gives me some confidence that people are still can do it. And I mean, Pennsylvania, obviously you can see Pennsylvania, we did well. I mean, both governor and also the senator, and I vote for both of them. We're happy they both won, and we mobilized a lot of Asian vote this time. And there's one thing I feel particularly good about Pennsylvania this time is that the first time they actually have a Chinese language in all the election and also in the promotion, which help us to mobilize more Chinese Americans, especially people who never voted before and actually become part of a process. I thought those are good signs and shows. I also, through the current situation, I become more and more appreciate what Andrew and the forward party try to do here. We have to think about something beyond just immediate, defending the democracy and make sure the process is fair and in process and can still work. That is we have to think about how do we improve the system, even change the system. We need more choice. I mean, that's just so simple. We just locked in only one tool. I mean, how do you? Yes, I agree, and I wrote many times about you have one choice, you have no choice, right? And so from one to two, from 1 to 2 is a major a fundamental difference. I mean, one have choice, one do. I mean, we came from China, so you understand what I'm talking about. You know, when you have no choice, I mean, you have only one candidate, I mean, you have no choice. If you have 2, it's better you have a choice, but there is still a difference between two options as versus 10, right? Or as 5. and right now, Americans have a very limited choice, and we're just facing. And then because of that limited choice, you cause people to divide and they're fighting like enemies, right? Rather than it's a civilized process. So I think in that way, I definitely very supportive what Andrew tried to do here. And also I see some very practical things that Andrew, you're doing. We're very supportive. That is, one is changing the voting process, like open primary, like ranking voting. I mean, like many of these are concrete steps we have to actually implement. And the other thing is, I really hope the next in 2024, if Forward Party can really put up like 30 or 50 candidates, and that's good. At least give voters more choice, and we can choose. And I think that's a big improvement. So I do looking forward to that. And so overall, to the midterm, I feel they reinforce some of the belief I have with American democracy. It still can work. But on the side, also continue to expose its problems and weakness, and then we need to work together. I like the idea that Andrew you just suggest about, can we create this kind of really a swing vote, and some critical, like right now, you know, runoff voting in Georgia. I don't know what we can do, but I'm just thinking if we can do anything there, you'll make a statement. I mean, I'm just thinking you have to make a statement. People say you actually matters. So I'm very if anybody have any idea.
Hender's had a great suggestion. Was like, hey, let's ask for a Supreme Court justice, which would be very meaningful and would actually start deciding some of these issues in a particular way. And I just said, like, thinking bigger. So to your point, Xiaoyan, in terms of the Asian American vote in Georgia. So one, I'm so glad, like, so people think you have 2 choices. In most of the country, you don't even have 2 choices.
Right.
You know what I mean? Oh, it's true. It's like 70% of these districts are uncompetitive, like 90% of the congressional. Most of us live in either blue or red areas, probably blue areas, given, you know, most of us. So like, you know, you don't even have like a real choice most of the time. You know, so the joke I tell, which is accurate, like the worst possible number of political parties is 1, then the second worst is 2. and then these 2 have just carved up the country anyway. But if we were to get the Asian voters of Georgia say, like, look guys, like let's say, like, hey, if you want us to vote for you, here are the things we want, and then link that coalition with the Asian voters plus others in Nevada. Though what's funny is that, like, the people who join with this coalition will be like, do I care about an Asian Supreme Court justice? And then we'll be like, well, what do you want? And they'll be like, oh, you know, like I want this other thing. It'll be this fun coalition. But if you get you know, 5% of the voters, I think the catchiest name I've figured out so far of the ones we've thrown up there is probably something like the swing 5% or something like that. Just like try and say something. It's like, we're gonna get 5% of the vote in 5 swing states, maybe like 5% in 5 or something like that. And then we target 5 swing states and say that this is our, you know, this is our challenge. And by the way, if you just give me 5 states to work in over a year's period, like I can make a lot of hay, you know, like I can go to a state over and over again and then bring with me, you know, like someone to speak to the Latino community, someone this, like we could like work it out and like grind it out in various communities. But if you target 5 states and then we raise, I don't know, again, I said 20, but even if it's like 10 million, you spend 10 million in 5 states and sign people up, like you can do it.
I think it's Georgia and Arizona, Nevada, and that's all the swing state, including the maybe Iowa. Iowa is the
Iowa's left the yard, man. In Wisconsin, hang on, let's look this up. How many Asians are there in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania? I looked up Michigan, it's 3%. Yeah. Let's look up. I mean, I don't know they're in.
I think Xiaoyan knows what's the percentage in the Pennsylvania? 9%?
No way, it's 9. If it's 9,
3.
I mean, you're talking about Asian or talking about Chinese?
Yeah, Asian.
Asian probably 5, 6. I think
Yeah.
that's
Oh, okay. Yeah.
If Pennsylvania was 5 or 6, that would be great. I mean, I
Yeah.
did campaign in the Chinatowns and like Philly in there, but it was like, okay, so Wisconsin's 2.8. Wisconsin's 2.8. Michigan is 3. Let's see what Pennsylvania is.
But I just wonder for Georgia. I mean, like we do have a lot of friends, you know, people in Georgia and you know, Chinese organizations in there. But the point is, look at these two candidates. It's 49.4, right, to 48. I mean, it's like less than 1% right now, the difference. and this one person just can't carry over to 50. I'm looking at it as so finite. I mean, obviously that's a special situation in Georgia. You know, you have to have 50%.
Yeah, you're going to be the center of the political world for another 3 weeks too.
I know. It's just that,
nuts.
you know,
You thought the
you
ads were over. Like the ads just keep coming.
push over 50%. There's like 10,000 voters. I don't know. I mean, I'm just not.
It's true. You don't need that many. It's true. Like we didn't even need 5% in Georgia. We had 1%. We could do it. It's so looking at it with Asians as this like centrist bloc, you know, so it's 3.5% in PA, which seems right to me. 3% in Michigan, 2.8 in Wisconsin, but it's still a starting point. You know, like if you go there, especially because if you spend time with the Asian communities in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania and Michigan, no one really is focused on them right now. You know what I mean? They're not like considered an important group. They're an afterthought. so if you start there, and then so let's map the states. So 5% and 5 is very catchy, but it sounds like we might do 6. So it's GA, AZ, NV, MI, PA, WI. I think those are the 6 swing states, right? Those are going to be the closest.
Yeah.
We could do 6% and 6. I don't know, whatever. We'll think of something snappy. But but if we pull that off, like we could have the keys to the kingdom 2 years from now. And Hendra, like Supreme Court justice, sure, you know, like you know, like this just like, and this group should. So Henry says we should keep a chat going. I agree with that. I don't know, Don, if you manage that. But we should storyboard like the freaking dream asks. It should be incredible. It should be like sun, moon, and the stars. You know what? As a matter of fact, I just thought of another thing just for fun. We need a media org.
Yeah.
We should. Oh, so excuse me.
That's you.
we should ask for like a ton of money and a federal license, so like a media org, like have a cable channel and everything else, and like have it all be paid for. Screw it. Yeah. Why not? I mean, we're like just asking for stuff. It's like solve all the, you know, it's like whatever the inequities are. Let's go get that. Well, this is a thrill to be able to connect with you all. Hats off to you, Brian. Rooting for Cindy Chavez. I don't know how many of you are into that race, but Cindy's a great candidate. Really warm to the Asian community, and Brian's been managing her campaign. But I'm going to close really echoing what Xiaoyan said, which is I thought that election day was writ large a big win for America. So win for voters, win for people who want there still to be a path forward and that things aren't just decomposing. You know, like there's still some integrity in this land of ours. We just have to work as quickly as we can to strengthen the forces of progress and good and rationality, and diminish the extremism. Because right now extremism threatens to overtake us. And one of the ways I'm trying to turn off the extremists is by like weakening their political clout via the political reform. But there are a lot of other things we could do, and thrilled to be working with you all to make this happen. But I agree, it was a win for the country.
Brian.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And it's a pleasure to be working with all of you guys on this chain. I mean, we have a lot of great opportunity ahead of us. We just need to band together and in order to get things done for the country. And there's a lot of great ideas here. We just need to make it happen and turn it into a reality.